Hey there, welcome to Mary Grace Media. Whether you're here for the first time or the 100th time, I'm really glad you found me and I hope you enjoy the content. I'm just going to encourage you to jump right in, and if you do like it, make sure you subscribe, follow, share, leave comments, and go check out my website, marygracemedia.com. And I just pray that God blesses you and your family and that you walk in His peace all the days of your life. Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, March 12th. You're at Mary Grace Media, and you are tuning in for my live Tuesday afternoon show, Real Talk with Mary Grace. Hello, good to see everybody. As you're coming in, please share this, and the way that you do that is touch the bottom of your screen, touch the arrow. You can copy the link and share it on Twitter. You can copy the link and paste it into into emails or Facebook or any other place that you're on social media. Welcome everybody. Thank you. Appreciate that. It's good to see all of my friends from abroad and from the United States. I'm happy to see everybody. If you are watching this on replay and you notice that there's chat, this is a live broadcast, and so you can't participate in the chat on replay. If you do watch on YouTube, you can leave a comment later on, or you can contact me through my email, which is info@marygracemedia.com. You can also check out my website, marygracemedia.com. So, happy to see everybody. How is everybody doing? I see people are already hitting the hearts. That's awesome. First female president. So one of the things about Periscope, if you're new here, is that if I can't necessarily see everybody who's watching from outside. And so if you touch the screen while you're watching, it makes little hearts, and you just keep touching the screen, and that way I know you're here. And so that would be great, and that way I can know you're here. You can also chat, and I encourage you to do that if you're chatting about what's relevant. And I do have moderators in the chat. So if you decide to go off on a tangent, or if your comments are not relevant or they become abusive, then you get put in a timeout. And if you don't like the content that you're seeing, you're always welcome to self-deport. And the way that you do that is by hitting the X in the top of your screen, and you don't have to listen. So it's up to you, but thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. And we're going to jump right in. There's a lot going on in the news, and those of you who are familiar with my broadcast know that one of the things that I do is I take the current events, the news, the politics, and I try to bring some perspective and help people to get grounded in their understanding of what's actually going on, because there's so much information out there. There's so much happening with the fake news. There's so much happening from all fronts, and there's really no time for any human being to watch and read and research and digest everything. And I certainly don't claim to do that, but I am trying to help you guys, help my listeners get some perspective, hopefully a godly perspective that will help you to have an understanding and to walk in peace, and also to help others. And one of the things that I really want to emphasize right now is that we're coming into a time politically where we're going to see even more turmoil. I know for some of you that's hard to imagine, because since Trump announced that he was running for president, we have seen almost nothing but turmoil. And it's been a crazy ride from the first time he walked down the escalator to going through the Mueller report, through impeachment, through all of these things. There have been a lot of forces at play that have tried to take this president out. And we've seen that. We've seen the media in collusion. We've seen the DNC. We've seen the Democrats. We've even seen Republicans who like to pretend that they're the arbiters of morality in our society. And some of those people are actually the ones who are attacking the president the most, and who are the most outwardly betraying him. And so, he's beset on all sides by opposing forces. And so I want to help you guys get perspective on that. And we're in an election year. We are several months out from the election, and here we find ourselves with a major crisis that I believe was manufactured specifically to damage this president. And it was manufactured and released in China. I believe it's a bioweapon. A lot of people, you can disagree with me on that. You can, you're certainly entitled to your opinion, but that is my belief. And I believe that it was released by the Chinese to hurt this president and to hurt his chances for re-election. Because let's face it, there's a candidate running right now on the Democrat side. I mean, today it's going to come down to two people really. It's Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. And today Joe Biden is in the news for telling somebody he was full of what, for asking him questions about gun control. And he threatened to take the guy out behind the woodshed and beat him, in effect. And the media is defending this. And the same media that has been screaming about Trump's mental fitness for holding the office of president have been questioning his mental fitness are the same ones who refuse to hear any questions at all about Joe Biden's mental acuity. And we see a man who's in cognitive decline, and yet no one will call the no one will stop and say the emperor is wearing no clothes. And that's what we're dealing with Joe Biden. And so this is some of the groundwork that we are dealing with right now. And my message today is to all of my listeners, but those of you who are Christians, those of you who practice faith, my Jewish brothers and sisters, I really want to emphasize to you that this is a time when you have a choice of how to walk through this, how to walk through what's happening in the news, specifically with the Wuhan virus or the coronavirus, but also with what's happening in the political landscape and overall with policies, with decisions, with the way the news works, with the way that you interact on social media, and the way that you interact with your families, and the way that you set an example of how to respond and how to react in times of crisis. And so I wanted to start out by reading a couple of scriptures, because I think that this is a really important time, and we are being called higher as believers. We're being called higher as people of faith. Today is Purim, which is the Jewish observance of the time that Queen Esther saved her people from extinction. And she did that from a place of courage. She was called to stand up for her people. She was called to stand up for such a time as this. And because of that, to this day, the Jewish people celebrate the deliverance of God from the gallows of Haman. And so I think it's not a coincidence that we're talking about this today, and that people of faith are being encouraged and exhorted to rise up and to stand on their faith and not be swayed by the voices of this world, because the enemy of your souls, the devil, is a roaring lion, prowling about, seeing who he can destroy. That's his number one goal. And he wants you to agree with him in the fear-mongering and in the fear that is being peddled worldwide right now. And so I just wanted to encourage you that the 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of timidity or fear, but of power, love, and sound mind." And another translation of that is discipline. And so you're being given a choice of what you're going to partner with in your mind. And that takes discipline. It takes discipline to make a decision that you're going to walk in truth, that you are going to stand for the truth, which is that this virus is not the end of the world, that this is a strain of a virus that just happens to be contagious. And we see so many people in the media making a huge deal about this. There are media people and people on the left who are gleeful about the effect that this is having on the stock market. And, they think that they're hurting the president because he cares about the stock market. He cares about trade. He cares about prosperity, but they're actually hurting you. They're hurting you. And so, it's actually, so think about that. But what I want to encourage people of faith to do is to stand on the truth and not to partner with fear mongering. You have so many opportunities right now to stand on this. And I'll tell you, my parents are elderly. And one of the things that I do in my home is I maintain a positive and faith-filled stance. And I know that has an impact on my parents. And, I was just talking to my mom the other day. They go to the gym 3 times a week. And I asked her on Sunday, are you guys going to the gym tomorrow? And she said, oh yeah, we're going to go. And I just love that because, they're not living from a place of fear. My mom is elderly. They're both elderly. They have some health challenges, but we're not partnering with the belief that you have to wrap yourself in bubble wrap and just never go out again. Now, that being said, are we practicing wisdom? Yes, but it's like my mom said, didn't we learn in kindergarten to wash our hands? And so, it's really basic hygiene. And I'm hoping that the upshot of this is that we'll see less cases of the flu because people are practicing better hygiene in general and better just, public awareness. Because who wants anybody to sneeze on them ever? For example, nobody wants that. When I was a teacher, I taught all of my students, sneeze into your elbow, don't sneeze into your hand. Really basic stuff. But anyway, I just wanted to encourage you, this is a spiritual battle. And so it's important for us to stay in the Word of God and to walk in our identity. That's really essential that you do this at this time and know who you are and know who you are and know the authority on which your faith rests, which is the Word of God, which is the authority of the God of all of the earth. When David went in to fight Goliath, he said, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that would rise up against the armies of the living God?" And we are ambassadors of the army of the living God. And so we stand in a position of authority, and we can speak to a virus and say, you do not have authority over me or my family or anyone in this earth for that matter. We have a position of authority, and we fight from it's a spiritual battle. We fight from a position of spiritual authority in the blood of Jesus Christ. That is stronger, and the name of Jesus is stronger than any germ or virus or name or stock market situation or crash or rise or fall or any of that. And so I just wanted to start with that today, and I want to encourage believers to stand in that truth. And if you are in a position where you are feeling fearful, bring that to God and confess it to Him and ask Him to help you have courage, because He is the one who gives you courage, because He's in your heart. And so I just wanted to encourage you for that. That's encourage means to infuse with courage. And so ask Him. He sent the Holy Spirit, who is the encourager, and you have that inside of you as a believer. So tap into that and don't walk in fear. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to talk specifically about some things that happened in the news in the past few days, because I want to get you guys thinking. I know that there's a lot of things that are coming out in the news, and there's going to be a lot more. And people need to be prepared, because one of the things that we're going to see, I guarantee, is that we're going to see the unveiling of a lot of the crimes that were committed under the Obama administration, and maybe even under the administration before that and before that. And so it's important that people are prepared for this, especially those of us who are people of faith, because we're going to have to be walking alongside people who don't have faith, people who have been susceptible to the lies of the media and to the parties that they have been loyal to. And I'm talking about both parties. I'm talking about both sides of the aisle. There are nefarious characters on both sides. And so just because somebody is a lifelong Republican doesn't mean that they have been told the truth by their party and that their party has had their best interest at heart. And a lot of us know that. And a lot of you, I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but again, this broadcast is going to go out to many people. I hope it does. And so I want to speak to the people who are versed in this, but also to new people. And I want to give you guys just some groundwork and help you to understand that this fight is not over. This fight is far from over. We are in a critical stage with this administration and with this upcoming election. And you can bet that coronavirus is not the last stop for the deep state, who the media says doesn't exist. It absolutely does. It's not their last ditch effort. I can guarantee you that. But I can also guarantee you that the president and his team, including Bill Barr, including Mike Pompeo, including John Durham, many other people, a lot of the people in Congress and the Senate who have been working with him, they are not finished. There is a lot of revelation that is coming out, and it is not going to look good for many people from the prior administration, many of whom have said that it was a scandal-free administration. And we're seeing every single day people who are exposed for their treachery. Literally just today, an hour before I came on, I saw a news report that said the Pope admitted that priests held nuns as sexual slaves. Now, 2-3 years ago, did you ever imagine that an article like that would come out? Why is that information coming out? I'll tell you why. Because we have a president and his cabinet and his team who are committed to bringing truth and bringing justice. One of the challenging things when that happens, though, is that people aren't always prepared for it, especially people who have been committed to a certain way of life and to believing the best of an institution like the Catholic Church. And so there are a lot of what we call red pills that are going to be dropping, but they're going to be hard to swallow for many, many people. And I am part of a group of people who wants to do the best that I can to help prepare people for that. I'm not the only person. There are many, many people online who are doing excellent reporting, excellent work. Praying Medic is one of them. He has been faithful to communicate to us about all of the Q drops and the communication from the president and his team from the very beginning. He's in the broadcast right now. So I definitely suggest that you follow him. Go to his website, prayingmedic.com. You can follow him on all social media. He's a man of God, a man of faith. He hears from God. And so like I was saying, though, the stories that are coming out are going to require us to dig deep into our faith and to be the ones that take other people by the hand and help them to get through this, because it's not going to be pretty. We're going to see some really shocking things that are coming out. And so that brings me around to the to talking about the coronavirus. But before I do that, I want to give you a little bit of groundwork. A lot of people have heard of Q. A lot of people who are listening to me know who Q is, but there are many, 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 many people who still don't even know who Q is. They've never even heard of Q. And so we can't assume going into conversations that everybody is on the same page that we're on. Because let's face it, some of us are news junkies. Some of us spend way too much time on Twitter. Some of us, it's just what we do. We absorb information. But for whatever reason, there are a lot of people who don't. Maybe they just don't have time. There are people who have a lot of kids. There are people who have, other obligations. They don't have time. So that's what I'm here for. That's what Praying Medic is here for. We are devoted to getting this information out. So in a nutshell, Q is a group of individuals who have not been identified by name. But what we do know is that Q is a dissemination platform for involving people in researching and getting information that is all open source and educating themselves about things that have been happening for many, many years in the government and underground. And so that's a really simple way of saying it. A lot of the people, from what we surmise, they're military intelligence. It is a back channel, and it's the messages from Q are communicated on a website known as 8kun, and that is the only place that you will see any communications from Q. There are websites that take those drops, they're called, and they put them onto other places. They screenshot them and they put them, for example, on qmap.pub. And so that's the basics, the very basics. What happened is that Q started putting this information on 4chan, which then was moved to 8chan. That happened in 2017, October of 2017. That was the first time anybody heard from Q. And there are people who go on these message boards. They're known as anons because they literally don't give their name. And so when Q puts these messages on the boards, when Q first started, it was done in a very cryptic, Socratic questioning method, but it was done in such a way as to get the anons interested so that they would go and start researching, and then they would bring information back and try to get Q to validate or negate what they were saying. The whole point is that Q activated what has become known as a digital army, an army of digital soldiers who were the ones who started researching open source information to find out things that people really needed to know to prepare them for the things that we're going to start seeing and the revelations that we're going to start seeing. I hope I've explained that well. It's not complicated, but the mainstream media will tell you, I'm going to tell you straight up, they've been saying this all along, that it's either that it's a conspiracy theory, that the Q people are crazy, that the Q people are responsible for deaths and murders and crazy things happening. That's just not true. But if you know anything at this point about the media, you know that the media will do their best to try to discredit anything that literally brings the truth. And from everything I have seen, Q is bringing truth. What I recommend really is that you go to prayingmedic.com, and if you really want to take a deep dive into who Q is, you can go to his website and you can actually buy his book. He published a book on Q, and that came out. When did your book come out, Dave? If you're in the chat, you can tell us. And he's working on the second book right now. And so he really goes through and explains what it is that I just told you. We're talking about 2.5 years of information and Q drops. And so I can't tell you all of it, but I'm just giving you really like the 30,000 foot view of what it is so that you understand, because I'm going to mention Q in a few minutes. So yeah, it's been a long time since Q started dropping. So anyway, so I'm just giving you that background, and there's a lot to cover, but I wanted you to understand that because I wanted to tell you something that I think is happening with the coronavirus. And this is just my theory. I think about things like this. I sort of try to put the puzzle pieces together. I try to listen to Holy Spirit, and I think that I'm onto something, but I may not be. And, I'm not telling you that I'm right. I'm not telling you that you have to believe what I'm about to tell you, but I want you to prayerfully consider it, because I think there may be some merit to what I'm saying. I think something that happened over the weekend got my attention. Actually, yesterday. It really started yesterday, but in a big way. But over the weekend. So I'm going to start by asking you a question, though. Okay, if you were Q, if you were the president, if you were the president's team, and you wanted to get people on board with what it is that you're trying to accomplish, even your enemies on board, how would you do that? Would you force them into compliance, or would you leverage a situation that many believe to be a crisis and use it to your advantage to get your enemies to work with you? What would you do if you were the leader of the free world? What would you do if you were the Q team and you know that you have a certain agenda that you want to pass, which is to restore rule of law and expose crimes and get your agenda passed, get your mandate passed? What would you do? How would you do it? If I were Q, I would want to get cooperation from my enemies. I would actually want my enemies demanding that I do certain things. If I were the president, I would want my enemies to be the ones asking and demanding that certain things be done. I don't know about you guys. Wouldn't that be easier than enacting military force or something like that, or signing executive orders? Wouldn't you want your enemies coming to you and saying, hey, we need to do this and this and this to keep people safe? If I were Q, if I were the president, I would do that. So I started thinking about what's happened the last few days. The coronavirus is a big deal because it's highly infectious. It's communicable, right? And so you have story after story after story causing people to get into quarantine. All of Italy is under quarantine, right? The economic system is being affected by this. It's affecting everything. And like I said earlier, I believe that it is a bioweapon that was released to do damage to our economy and to this president and to his chances of re-election. And so everybody in the media and many people, even on the conservative side, would have you believe that this is Trump's Katrina, that this is a disaster for him, that this is going to hurt his chances of re-election, that the economy is going to go into a recession and that it's not going to recover. How many of you believe that? How many of you think that's true, that that's really going to happen? Well, I happen to know, from having observed the president for a long time, I know that the president is not caught off guard. I know that he's not worried. I know that he has a plan, and I know that he had a plan before any of this happened. How do I know? Well, because I know that the president and his team actually put in place security measures for bio attacks, for bioweapons in the very beginning of his administration. We know that. And so they were prepared for this. We also know from the Q team that the president is surrounded by what are called white hats, and these are the good people. And so he's cleaning house. He's bringing in, he's been bringing in and continues to bring in people who are loyal to him that he can trust. And one of the things we know is that we have their comms, we have the communications of the deep state. And so the things that tend to come as a surprise to you or to me or the media, sometimes the president acts like it's a surprise, and he acts like he's in a position of compromise or in a position of weakness, and he says things like, gee, I sure hope they fix this, or I hope they can get this sorted out, and he sounds weak. Well, he wrote a book called The Art of War before he was ever president, which is The Art of the Deal, which is based off of The Art of War, which is written by Sun Tzu. And one of the principles of that is appear at your weakest to lull your enemy into a sense of complacency. And, when you are the strongest, appear weak. And so the president is really good at doing that. And if you watch his body language and you watch his communication and you look at the way that he's doing things, you look at his Twitter timeline, the president is not worried. He would like to, he's okay with the media thinking that this is a failure. He's okay with the media thinking that this is his Katrina. Yesterday, he was tweeting like crazy. And generally when that happens, it means that something is going on, and that is his way of saying, look over here, not over here. And on the same day that he did that, Q did another drop, and it was after a period of silence. And Q made a drop and a couple of drops, but Q posted, and one of the Q posts said "rig for red." So where am I going with all this? Where am I going with it? What I'm doing is I'm trying to show you how much I believe the president and his team, and by extension the Q team, are in control of the situation, and how much we're going to come out victorious on the other end. And that's what I want to show you. So bear with me, because I'm going to pull a couple of threads together, and I hope that it's going to make sense. Okay? Let me take a drink. Let me know if you're still here, because I'm going to jump into this. I'm going to jump into it. Okay. So, all right. So backing up. All right. So Q was silent for a while. The coronavirus hits. Everybody thinks it's a disaster. People are panicking. People are, getting tested. Hospitals are panicking. There's just like massive panic. The market is going down. They're saying it's a recession. It's the end of the world. Well, how many times since Trump became president have we heard that this is the end? A lot of times. How many times has he come out victorious? Every single time. And so something started happening over the weekend, and specifically yesterday, that got me thinking, and my wheels started turning. And so I'm going to try to explain it to you. So on Sunday night, Danny Scavino tweeted out a meme, and it was a meme of the president playing a violin, and I'm going to grab it here. It was a meme of the president playing a violin, and on the meme, I'm going to find it. Hold on a second. They mess up his timeline sometimes. Where is it? It's coming. Oh my goodness. The other thing Twitter is doing is that they're making it hard to scroll through. They make it freeze up. Now they're showing me the same thing over and over again. Okay, hold on. So the meme, the president was holding a violin. Here we go. All right, so Danny Scavino tweeted this out. It said, my next piece is called "Nothing Can Stop What's Coming." All right. And so the people who follow Q immediately knew what this was, because it's something that Q has said over and over and over again. And for the people who say that Q isn't real, it's sort of difficult to refute that when you see the president's social media director and the person who handles his Twitter tweeting that out. And then the Anons went on the board on 8kun and said, hey, would you please, Q, can you have the president retweet that? And so 17 hours later, the president retweeted it and said, who knows what that means, but it sounds good to me. And 17 is the number in the alphabet which corresponds with Q. Q is the 17th letter of the alphabet. So that's what we call a Q proof. And so those of you who are kind of wondering, wait, is this real? That was a really legit Q proof. Okay, so that's what started this ball rolling. And so then the same time, Sunday night, the markets were already predicted to be in a crash on Monday morning. The futures were down. All of the analysts were saying that the market was going to be down on Monday. And in the meantime, the news broke that somebody at CPAC, which is the Conservative Political Action Conference, I think, run by Matt Schlapp, that somebody at CPAC had been infected or had come down with the coronavirus. And there were like 10,000 people at CPAC, including the president. And so that news was circulating over the weekend. And it was very interesting to me because I started to notice who was really talking about it the most. And the people who were talking about that the most and about what became known as patient zero, the people talking about that the most were the usual suspects of what we call MAGA shills. They're people who pretend to be conservative Trump supporters, and on the surface they really look like it, but their purpose is to create division among Trump supporters, to divide the base. And I saw those people talking about it a lot and tweeting about it, and one of them was even saying that he had inside information and he knew exactly who patient zero was. I thought that was interesting. So I pay attention to things like that, and I was just thinking about it. I thought, well, that's kind of weird. And so then yesterday, of course, the market opened 7,000 points down, the biggest drop since I think 2008. This is the end of the world. This is the end of Trump's presidency. Recession, recession, recession. And then, as if it couldn't get any worse, people from Trump's inner circle started announcing that they had been in contact with patient zero at CPAC and that they were going to be self-quarantining. One of them was Matt Gaetz, another one was Representative Gosar, another one was Ted Cruz. And I thought that was really interesting. I thought, why are they announcing this publicly? Why are they self-quarantining? And then it started to hit me. I thought, wait a minute. This is interesting, the way this news is unfolding. And again, the president was on a tweet storm. And in the middle of all this, the president tweets out and says, oh, by the way, the Obama administration was the most corrupt administration ever. He just tweeted that out, completely out of context, nothing to do with the current situation. As far as we know, he tweeted it out. And so I start noticing these things, and the way my brain works is I notice these little anomalies, and I start to think, and I'm asking God, okay, what's going on here? What, first of all, why are the usual suspects who are constantly throwing shade at the president, why are they the ones who seem to be in the know about what happened at CPAC? Because you'll find in this business that there are certain people who seem to be in the know, who always have the scoop. And you see, and one of the things that Q said is be very careful about who you follow. And there are absolutely no outside comms. That means that Q isn't communicating directly with any one person, that Q would only communicate on the message board. So that's important to know. But so I'm watching this, and then I see one by one these people from the president's inner circle, kind of people that were in the VIP room and in the green room at CPAC, who also had contact with the president and the vice president and probably shook hands with everybody. They were they're announcing, oh, I came in contact with patient zero, and so I'm going to self-quarantine. And I just thought, my spidey senses are jumping all over the place. What's going on here? Why are they announcing this anyway? And so then I just started to think, okay, we know that there are big things coming from Durham. We know that the FISA renewals are coming on the 15th, and that's in the news. We know that this corona situation is going to get worse before it gets better. And we know in the middle of this, I believe that there is going to be some very strong, there's going to be some big news dropping, for example, about the corrupt Obama administration. There's going to be news dropping that is not going to be easy to swallow. Well, in the past, what has been the reaction of the deep state, people, that we know, like the Soros crowd, what do they usually do when there's bad news or big news that makes them look bad? Can anybody type in the chat, what is one of the things that almost always happens when deep state is cornered and they want to change the news cycle? They want to take over the news cycle. What do they do? I think people are paying attention because they're watching the news about this virus. It's not drinking. They probably do drink, but what do they do? Can anybody say? They deflect, but they also, yes, false flag. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what a false flag is, a false flag is an incident, sometimes a mass casualty incident, or a manufactured crisis that completely shifts the narrative. It can be a shooting, right? A school shooting or a concert shooting, something like that, that turns the narrative back to gun control. It's usually somebody that is usually white, right? They have an agenda, and so they'll activate somebody. False flag doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It means that it's something that is, it's like waving a flag over here that gets people to distract their attention off of the story that's happening. So it's a false flag. The term is from battle, where it's like you get your enemy to pay attention to, how am I trying to say this? A false flag. It's not really. It's not the whole. There's not. It's not all true, right? It's not an organic occurrence. It's a shiny object, and so it gets people to take their attention off. And so we've seen many times that there have been mass casualty events. When does that happen? It happens when people are in big crowds. And so I started thinking about this. I thought, well, if I were the Q team and I wanted people to not get into big crowds, into what are known as kill boxes, where the deep state could, inflict a lot of casualties, wouldn't it be great if I could get people to stay home more and maybe to self-quarantine? And so I just started thinking, when I saw the conservatives announcing that they were self-quarantining out of an abundance of caution, I just thought, well, wouldn't that be just like Trump and his team to actually have people leading the way in self-quarantining to keep people home and to keep them from being in situations of danger? And since that happened, since yesterday, and I may or may not be right about this, I actually talked to Dave about it, Praying Medic, and he said that he thought it was kind of strange too when he saw people like Matt Gaetz and Ted Cruz announcing publicly that they were self-quarantining, and he was trying to figure out what was going on. And his theory was that the reason for wanting people to self-quarantine is to actually prevent rioting. Because when we get revelation of bad things that are happening, we have seen a lot of rioting, especially if it's something that makes the Trump administration look good. Then we get Antifa and the left out there causing mayhem, and that usually happens in places like college campuses. Well, guess what? Harvard sent all their students home today or yesterday, and then American University in Washington, D.C. Told their students, we're doing everything online right now. Another university, many universities are telling their students, stay home, okay? They're on the verge of canceling Coachella. So all of these events where masses of people could be assembled are literally being canceled. I don't think that's by accident. I don't think it's by accident, because if you were the president and you wanted people to stay safe, would it be easier if they did it of their own accord, or if you ordered a lockdown, if you ordered a curfew, if you ordered quarantine? Can you imagine if this administration came out and ordered a quarantine? That would not be good. He would take so much flack for this. But if he has people from his own administration, from his own inner circle, announcing that they are self-quarantining, they're setting the example. Again, this is just a theory, guys. I'm just telling you how kind of what is coming out of my thoughts and my understanding. But let's take it a step further. Let's take it a step further and see, and let's see what other things might be the outcome of this. So we know that that the top issues that have been at the forefront for this president are immigration, our supply chain, our manufacturing, our energy, our monetary system. So these are big topics that the president has talked about constantly. He talks about it in every rally. He talks about it every chance he gets. And these are things that the left has pushed back against repeatedly. The left wants open borders. They want a situation that is really unsafe. They do not want to close the borders. In fact, the president, the court system right now has blocked this administration from sending asylum seekers back into Mexico. In the beginning of 2019, we had this in place where the asylum seekers weren't just turned loose in our country, and it was blocked in the courts recently. It's probably going to go to the Supreme Court. And so that's an example. And so if you're the president and you want to get tighter security on our borders, why would you not leverage something as critical and severe as the coronavirus to say, you know what, you're absolutely right, we probably haven't done enough. Let's get these borders closed down. Let's keep people from coming in who shouldn't be here, who may potentially be carrying this virus. And then you got the very people who've criticized you, who called your travel ban a Muslim ban, the very same people who are doing that, you know, they're saying he hasn't done enough to stem the spread of the virus. So how can they argue with him if he says, well, that's it, we need to close the border, for example? Okay, another example is that he's been wanting to get manufacturing back in this country. He placed tariffs on China. He passed the new trade deal, completely got rid of NAFTA. And so now we have a situation where our manufacturers are already leaving China. They're already coming back to the US. For example, he got Apple to set up a manufacturing plant in Texas. More and more and more manufacturers are coming back. Well, isn't it easier to convince your enemy to cooperate with you on something very simple like manufacturing if they are running out of face masks and toilet paper and pharmaceuticals because they're all manufactured in China? So if you wanted to have leverage and you wanted to force your enemy to agree with something that you've been trying to do for a long time, wouldn't this be a good time to take advantage of the situation? And you know, think about the way that Trump thinks, the way that the Q team works is it's very Zen-like. And what I mean by that is in martial arts, you know, a lot of the way that you win is by channeling the energy that's coming at you. You don't necessarily hit back. If somebody punches you, you grab their arm and you pull them past you and you let them fall down on their own. And so that, I think, is a lot of what the president is doing. So he's waiting, he's allowing the Democrats to walk into cooperation with him, because especially if it's their idea, for example, right, exactly. So California is a state of emergency. They closed the borders. Hey, hooray, that's a victory for us. We didn't even have to do it. The president didn't have to go in and say, we're closing your border. That's a huge border. It's a huge state. And so that's just something to think about. Okay, so energy. We are now, the reason that the oil prices dropped so low and the reason the stock market tanked yesterday, it largely is because of the dispute that's happening between the Saudis and the Russians. And I don't think that's by accident. But guess what? We're not dependent on foreign oil anymore. You know why? Because our president made sure that we're not. And so regardless of what they do, regardless of what kind of spats and fights they're having overseas, yes, it can affect our stock market temporarily, but our stock market is not rock bottom the way it was under Obama. And so it's already bouncing back since today. It's already back up, and it's going back up. But do you see what I mean? So as a president, as a team that is wanting America to be independent and not depend on foreign nations for our manufacturing, for our pharmaceuticals, for any of our durable goods, for our energy, why not leverage a situation that allows us to take all of that negative energy and hate and destruction that's coming from the left and pull it into momentum for us? I see a president who is brilliant, who is working strategy that, first of all, allows the American people to recover and to be safe. But he does it in such a way that actually gets the enemies doing it for us. I mean, it's amazing, I think. And then the other thing too is with the monetary system. One of the things that the president has been wanting to do, he's been talking about the Fed for years, the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is not federal. The Federal Reserve is not federal. It is not run by the federal government. It's a central bank that manipulates currency. And our currency at this time is not based on the gold standard. Every dollar that you get in your hand is a promissory note. There's no hard currency or precious metals backing it up. And that's something that the president has not been happy about. The president has talked about this for years and years and years. He is not happy with the Federal Reserve, and he wants to restore the wealth of the people to the people. And so right now, the stock market is down, but it's not going to stay that way. Last week, the Federal Reserve dropped the interest rates by 0.5%. And I believe, based on what I'm reading and hearing, that it's going to drop more probably before the summer. And it's going to be done by the Fed as a way to stimulate the economy. And this is something that the president wants. Is it all he wants? No, but it's a step in the right direction. And then the other thing, like I said, is that the stage is being set right now for the president to reveal what is happening with the crimes that were committed by the past administration. So why do I think that? So go back to everything I've said about what was going on over the weekend, about the communications that are coming out of the White House, about the people who are self-quarantining. And I think that there's going to be information coming out that is going to make people upset, that could potentially spark riots, that could potentially trigger a bad incident by the deep state. Why do I think that? Well, the president, Q dropped yesterday a drop that said rig for red. And that is a nautical term which has to do with when a submarine surfaces. It's a command that says to get ready to be able to either get the periscope above water or to surface altogether. And it means that, and red has to do with the way that you adjust your vision, your night vision. And so that's not insignificant, because it means that things that were happening under the surface are coming to light, and that things are going to start to be revealed. And then yesterday, this is a small thing, but I talked about it, I believe last week, is yesterday the president was wearing the same yellow tie that he wore when he was in India. And I talked about that tie, and I said that tie is exactly the same color as the yellow nautical flag. And in the nautical world, the flags, colors, and symbols all have meaning. And that flag is the 17th flag. It's the Q flag, and it is the flag that signifies that a vessel coming into port is reporting that good health, and that they were requesting passage and dockage, and that they passed the health inspection. And I just think that was very interesting that he wore that yesterday. So again, I'm not a Q decoder. I don't pretend to be. I just try to put pieces together for you. And I'm trying to get you to think critically and logically, which is what Q wants people to do. And I'm just trying to get people to be aware and prepared for what is potentially coming. All signs are pointing to big revelations. I don't think Q would say rig for red if there weren't revelations coming. Mike Pompeo tweeted out a picture this morning of his family, and they were in a red room. I kid you not. And so there are little things like that that you pay attention to, and so you see, you just pay attention and you get ready to you get ready for what's coming. So how do we prepare? That's a good question. Let me just make sure that I've gotten through my list here. Are you guys tracking with me on this? I feel like I've just been talking nonstop for an hour, which I have, but I hope that I explained it well. I always remember things later that I forgot to say, but are you with me on it? It's a little bit out there maybe, but I think that I think my theory is pretty good, pretty sound. And bottom line, whether the president wants people to shelter in place to prevent the deep state from wreaking havoc, or whether he wants them to shelter in place to prevent rioting, it could be both. But his bottom line, his duty is to protect the American people. And he's doing that to the best of his ability, in spite of all of the opposition that has come against him nonstop from the time that he announced that he was running for president. And so, how do we prepare? Well, one thing that's very important is that we continue to pray, and that we pray from a place of authority. We know that God wins. And that is something that Q also said yesterday. God wins. And we know that. We know that we are victorious in our standing with Christ. We know that this is a spiritual battle. And so one of the ways that we win is by arming ourselves every day with the armor of God. And that is in Ephesians chapter 6. If you're not familiar with it, 6, starting in verse 10. That the weapons of our warfare are spiritual. This is a battle of good versus evil. This is a battle for the future of Western civilization. This is more than just a 4-year election coming up. It's really important that people understand that. Another thing that I want to encourage people to do is to really pray for wisdom, because the Bible says that if anyone lacks wisdom, that he should ask, and God will give it to you. And so I wanted to give you an example, because yesterday one of my listeners emailed me, and they said, I was hoping that you could help me. I have a relative who hates Trump, and they're saying all these bad things about Trump, and I want to know how to respond. And it was a whole laundry list. Every single thing you can think of that anybody would say about Trump, that he's a racist, misogynist, bad foreign policy, anti-Muslim. I mean, you name it. Every single bad thing anybody has said about the president was in that list. And, I'm looking at this email and I'm thinking it would take me an hour just to compose, talking points to refute every single one of those lies. I could do it. But here was my question, and this is something that I want to encourage you, because as the truth starts to come out, you're going to get hit by a lot of people who are going to continually say that this is lies, because they think that they're convinced that this president is a dictator, that he thinks he's a king, and they're listening to people like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, who are trying to drive the narrative that Trump is bad for our country. And they'll use words like, that the future of our democracy is at stake. They always sound like they know what they're talking about, but they're twisting words, because that's what the demonic does. It takes little truths and twists them into lies. But one of the things that I want to encourage you when it comes to these types of conversations, I really want you to pray for wisdom, because you don't want to spend your ammunition. You don't want to waste your ammunition. And so here's what I said to the individual, and you may be watching, and I hope that I hope it made sense to you. But what I said was, before we spend any time responding to these accusations, because they are accusations, and we know that the devil, Satan, is the accuser of the brethren. And so before we spend any time responding, my question is this: is this person even interested in the truth? Because if the person who is hurling these accusations doesn't have any interest in knowing the truth or hearing what you have to say, then why would you respond to them? Why would you spend even 5 minutes trying to refute a single lie that they hurled at you about the president? What possible good could come from spending your time on that? And so as you ask how to prepare, one of the things I would say is really pray and exercise your judgment on how you respond to people. Because, I'm assuming that this was in a Facebook post or in an email with this individual. And, I would ask the person, if this was a family member who was coming at me and saying all these things, my first question would be, would it make any difference if I answered any of your accusations with truth? And my guess is, based on my experience, is that it wouldn't. And so I would just say, let's just agree to part ways on this issue. I hope that, I wish you all the best. We are family. So, I just want you to know that I love you and I wish you the best. We'll just have to agree that this is a conversation that's not going to produce fruit. So that's one thing that I would say. But as the truth starts to come out about these things, try to identify the people that you think are open to hearing the truth and having the conversation. For example, if you have a family member that you think is leaning toward Joe Biden as a candidate, they may be open to seeing some of the videos of him groping people. That's a massive red pill. As more of the truth comes out about the types of crimes that were committed, the best thing you can do really is to get the facts, to say, hey, here's just a story that is going to explain to you what's happening. And the interesting thing about this is that a lot of the things that Joe Biden did, a lot of the crimes that were committed in Ukraine, for example, his son being on the board of Burisma, that was actually documented by the New York Times. And so you can find these articles that were written by publications that your leftist friends and family members actually respect. And because there was a time that the fake news wasn't as bad. There were some journalists who were holding people to account. Politico, The Hill, some of their older articles actually raised these questions. For example, Politico wrote an article about something that happened under the Obama administration called Project Cassandra, and that was where the Obama administration was aiding and abetting money laundering and gun running and drug running through car washes in Northern Virginia, and the money was benefiting Hezbollah. And that was an investigation that was shut down by the Obama administration. The FBI was ready to make arrests. They were running sting operations, and it was completely shut down. Politico reported on that. And so one of the things that you can do is you can give them little bits of information like that. And, you're not going to win everybody. You're just not going to. Somebody put in the chat just now, just be kind. And that is one thing that I really want to encourage, is that, you have, as a believer, as a person of faith, you are operating from a place of power and authority and love. And one of the things that the Word of God encourages us is, above all things, put on love. Because the way that we act and the way that we treat people, when these crises come out is going to make all the difference, because the Bible says that they will know we are Christians by our love, not by our gloating, not by going to a family member and saying, I told you so, I told you, right? That's not how you're going to win people. You're not going to do that. It's not going to happen. And so, just be kind. Yeah, the way that you live, the way that you interact with people. It's interesting. I live near Charlottesville, and as you know, that's a very liberal place. And so, it's a pretty small town, and I go around town, I do errands and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of people who know me. I've lived in this area on and off for years. A lot of my ancestry is from this area, but the point is that, I'm recognizable. I think people recognize me when I come in stores and stuff. Well, for a long time, I don't wear any political gear, right? I'm just myself. I just go in, I don't have my Trump hat on or anything. But lately I've started wearing my Trump hat, and it's kind of interesting. I have a camo hat that Andrea gave me. It's awesome. And it just says Trump. And it's interesting because, I get a lot of compliments. People really like it. But also the people that have seen me, day in and day out in the places that I go, they know I'm a kind person, right? I'm friendly, I'm happy, that kind of thing. And then they see me in the Trump hat, and it creates this cognitive dissonance. You can tell with some people, they look at me and they just go, wait a minute, this doesn't compute, because I thought he was this, this, and this. But this person that I've known for years to be really kind is wearing that hat. And so that kind of jars them. It kind of forces them to reevaluate what their preconceptions are. And so the point is, yes, be kind. Do something kind for somebody. Do something that's uncomfortable, and just show them, because that's really, that's sort of what our president has been doing too. And that's one thing that you can do also to slowly wake people up, is you can say, hey, did you know that the president gave a speech a couple weeks ago to a group of ex-felons, and he was talking to them about, getting hired in jobs and being able to get back in the workforce. And when he was finished with the speech, he actually told them that he had a number of employees in the room. Sorry about that. So when he was finished with the speech, he actually said, I have people here ready to interview you and hire you for jobs. And I would say that 99% of the people that who think that this president is racist and hate him have no idea that happened. Are people getting booted out of the scope? That happened the other day. Is the feed messing up? There's some issues with it. But those are little things that you can say to people. And so again, as the news comes out, my advice really would just be kind. Be ready to listen to people. If a story comes out and they're not going to get the news, they're not going to get the truth from the news. So just be ready for that, because CNN, NBC, even Fox is going to twist these stories. And so that might be an opportunity, when you get the true story, the real story, from a source like the Epoch Times, from a source like One American News, you might just say, hey, you know what, here's a different slant on this story. Why don't you take a look at this? So those are just some words of advice. We can talk about this more, but I have been on for an hour, and I'm trying to keep these broadcasts to a manageable length, because I know people like to watch on replay. I am going to try to get this up on YouTube. I have gotten a few things on YouTube. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to take a few questions if anybody has them, comments that are relevant to what we've been talking about. Hit the hearts if you found this valuable. Please make sure that you're following my channel. Make sure you're following me here on Periscope, but also follow on Twitter at Mary Grace Media, and then also follow my YouTube channel, Mary Grace Media. I'm trying to get that YouTube channel to 1,000 followers or more, because once I do that, I can go live on the channel, and there are other features that are available to me. So please, if you haven't done that already, please subscribe on YouTube and make sure you turn on the notifications so that we can have 2 different channels of communication. Just in case one goes down, you never know. And that's one reason I'm uploading my videos to YouTube as well, and saving them offline. So again, you're at Mary Grace Media. That's what you've been watching today if you came in late. If you didn't share, or even if you have already shared, please do it again by hitting the arrow at the bottom of your screen. Make sure you share from the beginning of the broadcast. And the last thing I'm going to say is that you can support this broadcast and other broadcasts by going to my website, marygracemedia.com. You can click on support, and there's a very easy donation link there so that you can do a monthly pledge, or you can do a one-time donation, and that just helps me put the time into this, host the website, and things like that. So I do appreciate all of the people who are partnering with me in that. It's awesome, and I thank you for that. And I wanted to thank the people who are listening on replay every day to every broadcast. We had a broadcast last week that had over 18,000 views, which is amazing to me, and that's because of you guys. And we're averaging, I think, about 14,000 views per broadcast. And so it's amazing, isn't it? And I'm very humbled by that people want to hear what I have to say. And it's all because of you guys. And I do thank you for that. I just thank you. And I thank you for all the feedback. I thank you for the comments on Twitter. Thank you for the emails. Thank you for giving me your feedback. It's really encouraging to do that. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, I mean, Sylvia, Sue, you've been following me for a long time, and just to see these kind of numbers, it's really awesome. And I do want to, I know he's not on here right now, but I do want to thank Dave, Praying Medic, because he helps get the word out. There are several of us that he retweets, and he has a really big account, and it's really helped. And so, if you get a chance, just go pop over to his Twitter and just say, hey, thanks, Dave, for sharing Mary Grace's broadcast. And so that would be awesome, because he's really busy, but just a true patriot, and I want to express appreciation for him. And you can also do that by going to his going and checking out his book on Amazon. He's publishing under the name Dave Hayes, but you can also go to prayingmedic.com and click on his books and his links and go find those. So I would love it if you guys would support him. Anything else? Any other comments? Any questions? Thanks for the hearts. Thanks for the super hearts. Any last comments or questions during this broadcast? I'm open for some questions. Anything. I know it takes a minute to write in the comments. So if you are typing questions, I'm going to say that I will be back on Thursday of this week at 4 p.m. Eastern, and then I will be back on Sunday night at 7:30 with Grace Notes Music, and that is my weekly worship set. And that's a time of worship and music and inspiration. A lot of people find that very valuable. It's not a political show, so if you do have friends who are not into politics or who have different politics from you, that is a show that you can share with everybody that you know, because we don't talk about politics there. We just talk about the Word of God, and we worship. A lot of people get healed. A lot of people get free from anxiety, from sleeplessness. There's just there is an anointing on it. And so I encourage you to go check that out. Those past shows are up on this Periscope channel, and so you can watch them. You can also watch some of them on my YouTube channel, Mary Grace Media. So yeah, that's just a little plug for music. It's a great time. It's really good. And those of you who pray, in addition to the comments and the hearts and everything, the prayers are really important. It is, there's a lot of warfare around what I do. There's a lot of warfare around what Praying Medic does, Andrea, Greg Harvey, the people who are broadcasting regularly. I want to thank you for your prayers, because it makes a big difference. This is a battle. It's a spiritual battle. And so I thank you for your prayers. I think that's it. And yeah, it's 5:15. So have a wonderful day, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy this beautiful spring weather wherever you are. It may be snowing, I don't know, but hope you get spring soon. And I really do appreciate everyone. Again, I will be back here at the same time on Thursday, the 12th. That's actually my birthday. So I'm going to broadcast on my birthday. We'll have a birthday broadcast. And I will see you guys on Thursday. Have a great day, everybody.